Got a cat hovering around in the background, just so you know. Welcome, everybody. As always, we can just begin by adjusting our postures. Maybe taking a few deep breaths in, breathing out slowly. So, breathing in as deeply as you can, breathing out as slowly as you can, just slowing things down a little bit. Because as we mentioned a few moments ago, life can feel quite fast paced at times. And this is that opportunity where we get to simply hit the pause button. And of course, it starts with our bodies. Start giving attention to your bodies and how it's moving a lot less than it was a few moments ago. Those few moments ago when you were getting ready for this practice, when you were putting the chairs and the cushions in order, the computers. Just beginning to discover to what extent you've managed to pause your bodies. And if you have managed to press the pause button on your body, notice how the body is here in this moment called the present moment, in front of these computers or tablets or phone devices, on top of these chairs, these cushions, these mats, within these four walls of these rooms that we find ourselves in. And very gently we'll begin to recognize that everything else outside of this room, everything that happened earlier on today, everything that happened over the weekend, over the past few days, weeks, months, years, they all belong in a previous chapter. And this practice is about this chapter, this new chapter that we're about to turn the page on and open. So if you can visualize yourself sitting in front of a very thick book, still on the last page of the last chapter, and it's been quite a book, it's been quite a story. There have been many experiences, many different people, many characters, many emotions, many places. And it goes on and on and on. Some of them we regarded as good, some of them not so good, some of them very challenging, some of them very painful. But for a brief moment, when I ring the bell, just notice where you are right now. And it's a very simple exercise. It's just on these chairs, the chairs that you find yourself on, the cushion that you find yourself on. Feel yourself being supported by that surface. These incredible speakers in front of you that allow my voice to reach you, allows our images to be shared, allows us to connect in this way. This room that you have allocated for this practice, how it gives you more privacy than many other spaces. You do feel safe. You do feel quite safe and secure. You feel quite comfortable, even if you're not even joining in the practice. Just the fact that you've stopped moving, that you're giving yourself a break, that the temperature you've managed to control around you to a level that's fairly comfortable. You've got comfortable clothes on. Your stomachs are relatively comfortably full. All of these represent the present moment. This sentence, this paragraph, the word that we find ourselves on this book called life, this storybook, which means every previous chapter, every story, every experience, every person brought us to this moment. And it's very possible that if anything in the past was different, if you've ever watched one of those science fiction movies where the smallest variation in someone's history can cause profound changes, you can be playful, but then you also begin to recognize the truth in it because all of those experiences led us to this present moment where we find each other, where we sit, where we breathe, where we tap into the present moment together. And this group practice, it's not something to be taken too lightly. It is deeply profound. It can sometimes be so much more profound than the relationships we share with those around us, our families, our friends, because very often when we are in those relationships, we still find ourselves separated by time, by the mind, by judgments, by those filters created by each and every one of us through that part of us called our personality. And so you may be sitting with somebody who's a blood relative or somebody you're in a very close relationship with, but you both may be very far away. But this practice right now is where we learn how to bring that presence and awareness into our lives, first with each other, by being here. And as we learn how to be present in this moment, and then in this moment, and then consistently in this moment, we will begin to find ourselves being more present in the various relationships in our lives. very often drawing those around us also out of their stories, out of their mind, out of their mind patterns, and into the present moment. Because presence is very contagious. And now, with the ringing of the next bell, leaving all of the stories behind, turning the page to discover a new chapter, a new beginning. Feel yourself lifting the page. Feel the weight of the page, the texture of the paper upon your skin, the sound of the page moving. And this new chapter, a blank page, with nothing to do, but everything to just be. Everything we need on this is on this page. And this becomes a practice of being, just being, not needing to make sense of anything, not needing to find or see results in this practice, not aiming for anything, not having any expectations, just being. And a few moments ago, we did establish that our bodies are here in this moment called the now. You can wriggle your fingers around, you can wriggle your toes around, you can feel the cushion underneath you, you can feel the clothing resting on your body. You might even feel the weight of the fabric that rests upon your skin. All of these important aspects of the present moment. And if you have started to get a glimpse into the stillness, the silence, the beauty of this present moment, it's because you are beginning to discover that you have the ability to invite your mind to join you in the present moment. And it may sound very strange using words like this, such as inviting the mind to join me in this present moment. That does sound a little bit strange. But one thing you will gradually begin to discover through this practice is that the mind is a completely separate entity that exists mainly in time. I mean, and a very good example of it is just by by noticing how safe, how secure, how comfortable, how alone, how much privacy you have at this particular moment. And then recognizing that everything you considered to be a problem, a challenge, has to do with a mind traveling into the past, reliving events in the past, or traveling into the future. And for those things about the present moment that you find the mind complaining about, and a very simple example is just listen out for sounds around you. Are there any sounds that are disturbing? This is probably one of those rare moments where a disturbing sound can be advantageous in this practice. But is there any sound around you that's annoying, irritating, that you would like to get rid of? Well, I'm pretty good on my side. Even though I can hear kids in the playground nearby, there's a school near my home, and they're all in the playground screaming and having a whole lot of fun. But I've taken that as a part and parcel of this lunchtime practice. And so it doesn't bother me. But if there is a sound that is bothering you, notice how your mind remembers a different moment, very possibly something, a time in the past when this sound was absent. And the mind wants to return back into the past to experience that absence of this new, irritating, annoying sound. At least that's what the mind is calling it. And so with the releasing, and then you realize, you suddenly realize you haven't quite let go of the previous chapters because there's still that comparison. And this is where this new bell comes along and helps you to release it. Here, with this bell, give the sound permission to exist. In fact, if you were to release the past completely, you would have nothing to compare this sound against. And this applies to any sensations within your body as well. Pain is often a sensation, a sensation that the mind has decided is unpleasant, that it doesn't like. And the mind remembers some time in the past where this sensation was absent and wants to go back, or sometimes forward into a future where it imagines this sensation to no longer be there. And so by releasing the past, by releasing the previous chapters, all you're left with are sensations, sounds, smells, tastes. Everything becomes new. Everything becomes all there is. Standards begin to dissolve. Comparisons begin to dissolve, and you find yourself embracing all that you find in this moment that we call the only moment. Where is your mind right now? Because one thing you will discover, one thing every single one of us will discover, is that it becomes so much easier to observe the mind once the distractions are not there. And that's probably what happened to many of us during this whole COVID lockdown. We found ourselves constantly distracting our minds with theater, movies, books, friends, visiting, traveling. Many of us had got into the pattern of constantly stimulating and distracting the mind. And then suddenly everything stopped. We had to stay home. And then there was probably a limit as to how much Netflix and television we could watch. And soon the mind got bored of the television, it got bored of the four walls that surrounded us. Everything became very familiar. And then the mind began creating problems. Watching the news, imagining what the future could be like, sometimes remembering the past, reliving old traumas, past experiences, reliving them over and over again. And then some of us, we began to realize that this was happening. And a new beginning began. That's when the practice started. We began to recognize that there was another way. And this way involved the developing of a new relationship with our mind, that we no longer needed to be so identified with the mind. Because despite being locked up at home, we saw how the mind was taking us into different time zones, different places. Very often the future and then the past. And it became exhausting. And this room can represent that, because right now, notice where you are. You're in a room. For most of us, our eyes are closed. The phones are switched off. The podcasts are turned off. The television's put away. But the only difference is this being a controlled environment where we are conducting the experiment. Now that you know what's going on, now that you know it is an experiment, watch the subject of the experiment, watch the mind. Recognizing how you can be the observer. How becoming the observer raises you above the mind, shifting your identification from mind, a mind that exists within time, into something so much larger, so much more vast. Something that exists outside of time. And it's quite obvious that the present moment is outside of time, because it's the present moment. Now. And now, and it was the present moment when we were a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old and an 11-year-old and a teenager. The one constant being that observer, that witness, that was always present, observing, witnessing. And it is this observer, it is this witness that we will realign ourselves with during this practice. And it just involves aligning ourselves into the present moment. But first, continue watching your mind, just recognizing some of these qualities. That first quality is how it exists within time. And a very nice way in which to observe is to first remind yourself that everything you see is not fact. The only fact is that you are in this room, that you are sitting, that you are breathing. Everything else is like a soap bubble. That conversation you're thinking about, those finances, the relationships, the state of your body or your health. Like little soap bubbles appearing very real, but somewhat distorted. Can you notice how it doesn't really give you a very clear reflection of the world around you? It gives you a very rounded, distorted lens. You can smell maybe soap. You can occasionally hear them popping or that very subtle sound that soap bubbles make as they move around. But the key to this practice is to see the soap bubbles for what they are, soap bubbles. And this recognition that they are not real, some teachers refer to it as the bubbles being touched through the needle called awareness. And it is this awareness that we are grounding ourselves into. So you notice a bubble, it rises, each bubble has a different shape, maybe even a different color, different shade, different shape. But the moment it gets touched by this needle called awareness, you will hear it pop. Why don't we be a little bit playful and pop some of these bubbles? So when you see any of these bubbles arising, just walk up to it, pop it, and return back into the present moment. Where you're comfortable, where your stomach is comfortable, where the clothes are comfortable, where you have privacy, you're quite alone yet surrounded by like-minded beings, fellow practitioners who are present, all together present in this moment called the now. Myself in the now called South London, and each and every one of you in a now moment in a different part of the world. Which makes every experience that you are having precious, extremely rare, unique, and precious. Moments that will never be replicated ever again. Your personal, unique, special experience. Giving every sensation that you can feel through your body the attention that it deserves. Giving every sound that you can hear around you and within you, sounds that are near, sounds that are far, the due attention that they deserve. Calling it a symphony if you like, a symphony of sounds, everything perfect. Every instrument having its role to play in this symphony that unfolds, that unravels itself before us and around us. Every smell, every taste or aftertaste, even the eyes, the play of shadows through the eyelids, the eyes resting. Even the eyes inviting us and reminding us that we are in practice, more awake, more alert, possibly than ever before, alert to the present moment. Despite the eyelids being shut, which we often associate with sleep, where we usually drift underneath thoughts. But here, still aware of the thoughts, still aware of the soap bubbles, but knowing the truth that we are here and that we can release. We don't have to pop all the bubbles. We can just release those that don't matter. It's usually the thoughts that take us away that we wish to pop. But many of these bubbles are simply harmless bubbles which we can simply release. We watch them pass through our experience, smiling, knowing, allowing, not even chasing after them as we did as children. But it is sometimes very tempting to chase after some of these bubbles. And that's why when you practice meditation or mindfulness, many facilitators will often ask you or remind you to be aware of your judgments. Because when you see a thought that you have feelings about, that means you either like or dislike. You'll find yourself chasing after that bubble. And sometimes the bubble gets blown by the wind, and you find yourself chasing after it, panting, running, and you're still chasing, and sometimes you chase after it for minutes, sometimes hours, sometimes days and weeks and months, exhausting, tiring yourself out. Which is why it becomes so precious to step outside of the thought process and simply be aware of judgments. And discover that the judgments themselves are bubbles that you can release. Bubbles that sometimes pop when touched by the needle called awareness. Let this bell represent a pop, bringing you back into the present moment. where you have discovered yet another vital aspect of this present moment, your now enhanced ability to recognize likes and dislikes, your ability to release these likes and dislikes, grounding you, anchoring you more and more into this present moment. Let's revisit a tool we often use, a tool that is always available to us, a tool that can help us to anchor ourselves in the present moment, no matter what the story is. A tool that has been with us since the day we were born, and a tool that will be with us until our final day on this earth, our breath, our most precious of possessions, of all that we could possibly hold dear to us. Bring your attention to your breath, because you know that in the middle of a storm, in the middle of an emotional storm, in the middle of a financial crisis or an illness in the family, the breath will still be there. And let us practice grounding ourselves into this present moment using the breath. And it involves exploring the sensations, the subtle and sometimes not so subtle sensations that surround every breath. And so at this stage, just breathing naturally, not forcing your breath in any way, but simply heightening your level of awareness of the air as it flows in and, of course, out, always in balance, just like everything else in our lives. People flow in and out. Money flows in and out and in. Health, body conditions, body shapes, constantly changing simply because they are made up of atoms and molecules filled with energy, constantly undergoing change. And so it's the way it was always meant to be. And many of us here in this room, we've spent a lot of time trying to control the surroundings, trying to control the world around us, and it's become very exhausting. And then in this practice, we learn how to live more unconditionally, which means no longer depending on the world outside of us, turning our sights within, developing that quality called insight. And as you bring your attention to your breath, as you breathe in, let the in-breath also act like a bridge, a tunnel, just like the tunnel within your nasal passage, a tunnel that transports you from the world outside to the world within. And if you were to listen to some of the traditional belief systems on this planet, or even some of the oldest belief systems, be it the shamans, the aboriginal cultures, even Hinduism, which has been here for many, many thousands of years, they all speak of the world outside of us as simply a reflection, a mirror of what lies within. Let's just pretend for a few moments that we are standing underneath this, standing on an open field, staring at the sky, and it's a clear night. And this is what it was like here in South London. And on Sunday, I went out for a nighttime walk in the woods, and all the stars were out in full glory. And you're gazing upon the sky, you're gazing upon the stars. Some of these lights taking thousands of light years to reach our eyes. A vast amount of space beyond the comprehension of the mind and the brain. Or perhaps standing in front of on a beach facing a vast body of water, the sea, the ocean, its vastness. Now, as you breathe in, discovering the same vastness within yourself. That whole outside, the skies, the oceans, the fields and the mountains, but reflections of the space within. Now each intake of breath deepening, allowing you to dive deeper and deeper into this ocean of stillness that lies within each and every one of us. And all you're doing is experiencing the sensations. Because this is the vastness of the present moment, the eternal present moment that we are tapping into. And so you continue to experience The warm, humid air as it makes its way out and down your nostrils and your nasal passage and your upper lip. And the cool, crisp air that you take in, that you breathe in. Each time thinking that you have reached the limits of this depth, of this quietness, of this stillness, but then discovering through your next breath that that was only the beginning. And each subsequent breath, each breath unfolding in the present moment, allowing you to reach even deeper and deeper and deeper into the stillness, the quietness. Perhaps also recognizing how the breath creates a bridge between these two worlds. This world of change outside and around us, and this spaciousness filled with kindness, wisdom, contentment. Contentment because there is no longer a need to be anywhere other than where you are at this moment. Everything's complete, nothing undone. Everything we've ever wanted, needed, here. It's always been here. Our ability to retire into this space, summoning up this stillness, this joy, this contentment, this peace at will. Through this simple yet profound tool called the breath. And in this final few minutes of the practice, let us remind ourselves of the very essence of this practice. There being three planes of existence: the world of matter, where this body sits, where there are these chairs, the furniture, this room, this city, this town we live in, this planet we exist in, this planet that exists within this solar system, within this universe, full of stars, galaxies, and so much more. All having a present moment. And a recognition of a second plane of existence called the mind, quite separate from the body. the mind that creates time, that exists within time, where there is a future and a past, that often tempts us to compare this present moment against. One filled with soap bubbles, existing predominantly within that concept called time. And now the final part, that which we have tapped into, called the present moment, beingness, consciousness, awareness, presence. Take a deep breath so that you may dive into this space that is beyond the world of matter, beyond the world of the mind, where it is eternally present, where it is eternally the present moment. Where we begin to accept that this space of beingness, this space of awareness, it exists beyond the comprehension of the mind, that it cannot be experienced through our five senses. And so, with the ringing of this bell, we leave the body, we leave the mind, we leave all that we know and dive into the unknown, breathing in the unknown, welcoming all that is, simply referring to it simply as that light, that effulgence, brighter than a trillion stars, kinder than any love we have ever experienced. Filling ourselves, filling every cell within our body with this light of awareness, this light of beingness, of kindness. And finally, releasing an intention. That this light of awareness, that it raise our ability to comprehend truth, that it lead us from darkness to light, from confusion and ignorance to clarity and knowing, and from death into immortality. And we wish peace onto this world of matter. Every living being, every animal, every insect, every bird, every fish, every flower. We wish peace upon the minds, our minds, the minds of those whom we care for, all of those others around us. We, we wish that they experience a glimpse into the stillness and the peace that we have tapped into. And that we become this very peace, this very essence, this very kindness that no words can describe. And now the final bell. Having stepped into the present moment together as this tiny little group, let us do our best to bring this presence with us as we have our meals, as we go shopping, as we work, as we interact with those around us, with strangers, with people we know. And watch how this light of awareness spreads from breath to breath and moment to moment. Please feel free to unmute yourselves. Thank you so much for joining in this practice and staying those extra 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinay.
It's a pleasure. Take care, my dear friends. And thank you for the patience. Thank you for staying. I didn't realize how time flew.
Oh, it's wonderful. Thank you, Vinay.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Welcome again, Ray. Bye. Hi, Maria.
Do you do this every day? Do you do this every lunchtime?
No, not every lunchtime. Usually Tuesdays and Thursdays, it's lunchtime.
We do wish that it would, though. So you're putting the thought out there. Sure.
It's very
Have a lovely
sweet.
day.
Have a lovely day too. And Ray, do you come in? Are you coming in from Jamyang, Ray, or are you coming in from Meetup? How did you find this meditation?
I joined a Facebook page for Buddhism for beginners or beginners Buddhism or something, and somebody recommended.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so
the link to I registered and they sent me the link.
Oh, wonderful. So if you'll see a website on that place you registered called mindfulness.zone.
Okay.
That's my website, and there you'll find what exact timings and all of that.
Okay, thank you so much.
On Mondays and Wednesdays, it's usually at 5 o'clock in the evening.
Okay.
All right. Take care. Pleasure.
Bye. Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye, Maria. Hey, nice to see you.
Bye.
Bye.